Good evening. I'm Mark Kendall, the interim president of the League of Women Voters of the state of Oregon. I'm honored to serve the league, and tonight I'm especially honored to and welcome all of you to this bipartisan congressional candidates forum for Congressional District 2 in Oregon. The league's been defending democracy in Oregon and nationwide for over 106 years. We are a nonpartisan, grassroots, and nonprofit political organization with 15 local leagues and units across the state. Despite our name, the league is not membership's not limited by gender, and everybody is welcome, even you. And this evening's forum is a result of hard work by the leaders of our five Congressional District 2 chapters in Deschutes, Klamath, and Union counties, and in the Rogue and Umpqua valleys. They believe, like I do, that rural Oregon matters and that district voters deserve to hear directly from candidates who seek their trust and support. And they designed this forum to meet that objective. I also wish to thank the 8 candidates, Democrats and Republicans. Running for office is not to be taken lightly, and it's an important public service, and it's a huge commitment. We appreciate your commitment to public service and your openness to answer our questions this evening and about how you would serve. You've undoubtedly seen our messages to leave political hats, signs, t-shirts, and stuff, campaign stuff at home when you attend our in-person league meetings. The league events are strictly nonpartisan. We don't endorse political parties, candidates. We instead do our best to support voter education and voter resources, much like this forum. I want to assure you also that meaningful civility isn't about silencing anybody. It's important for difficult questions and arguments to surface in a campaign, and so we can face them all head on and understand all of the parameters. Civility requires that we remain fair, objective, and treat everyone with respect. Now I'm pleased to turn the program over to our esteemed moderator, Les Seitz, and the conversation you've all been waiting for from our candidates. A veteran Oregon journalist of over 50 years, 25 at the Oregonian. He's a two-time Pulitzer finalist. Les owns the Salem Reporter. He's a resident of Congressional District 2 who lives and works on his family ranch in Grant County. So over to you, Les.
Hey, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. And I want to welcome all of you who are in this session this evening, and particularly welcome those who are in the watch parties being held by the League of Women Voters in Roseburg, Klamath Falls, LeGrand, and White City. Thanks, and we'll get to work here. So as you all know, the 2nd Congressional District is a sprawling district covering a good chunk of geography in Oregon. But despite the scale of this district, there are common issues that affect all of us who live and work in this district. This evening is your chance to learn how candidates for U.S. House of Representatives will address some of these issues. They'll be asked to answer questions throughout the evening that they have not had a chance to preview, so they are hearing the questions just as you are. We have 8 candidates with us this evening, 2 on the Republican ticket and 6 on the Democratic ticket. The one candidate who's missing from us this evening is the incumbent, Republican Cliff Bentz. He was invited repeatedly to attend this event and didn't respond. That's regrettable. The process will be this for the evening. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide you an opening statement. Then we'll go into questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then we'll close with a 1-minute closing statement. I'll be the time monitor. We want to be respectful of your time and of each candidate's time. So with that, let's get to work, and we'll start with our opening statements. And first up is Chris Beck. Chris, you need to unmute.
There we go. I failed the first test. Thanks, Les, and everybody for joining. I bring a lot of experience to this position. I served in the Oregon legislature. I've worked as staff in the Oregon legislature for John Kitzhaber when he was Senate president, and staffed the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee before actually getting elected to serve in the legislature. After that, I worked for a national nonprofit, was involved with land conservation issues throughout Oregon, working with private landowners and public agencies. And then I ended up serving with the Obama administration in Washington, D.C. at USDA headquarters, where I was working for 6 years on rural economic development policy. These are the sorts of public service experiences I've had that have infused my career and qualify me to hit this job from the beginning, get going, not a big learning curve, and I think I can be effective in Congress. I grew up in Oregon. I have family roots in Eastern Oregon and spent a lot of time growing up in the Ponderosa forests, hunting and fishing along the Deschutes and out in the desert, looking for arrowheads and rocks. And that was what we did in our family. So I've known these communities really my whole life, and I've watched them change, good and bad, and seen the mills close. And that has given me a perspective that I think I can bring to Washington and work with people to turn things around. Some communities are doing better, but others still need help. And my experience at USDA, which is an agency that has tremendous impact on the district, I think I can translate that into helping all the voters of District 2 in various capacities.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next up is Andrea Carr. And be sure to unmute, Andrea.
Yep, I just got that done. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Carr. I'm a sixth-generation Oregonian. I didn't learn about our amazing state just from a textbook. I learned it breaking horses, riding in rodeos, and working on the decks of fishing boats in the Bering Sea from 1988 to 1989. I've spent my life doing the hard work that built the state. Currently, I serve as a personal support worker, and I'm a very proud member of SEIU 503. So every day I see the gap, the ever-growing gap between policies made in the far-off offices and the reality of families right here in CD2. I am running because our district deserves a leader who understands both the grit of our industries and the heart of our caregiving community. Tonight, I'm not just here to give you rehearsed answers. I'm here to offer a vision for an Oregon that values its heritage while securing its future. I think we need to talk about real solutions for our economy, for our communities, for our tribal communities as well, and all of our health and all of our safety. And I am very appreciative and grateful for this opportunity to participate with my fellow running mates. I don't believe this needs to be a partisan issue. I think we need to have partnership, and I think we need to learn that without one another and without a symbiotic relationship in CD2, we aren't going to get anywhere. And I offer that skill, and I thank everybody very much for that.
Okay, thank you. Mary Doyle, you're up.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for the League of Women Voters and everyone here tonight. I'm running for Congress because in rural Oregon, the challenges we face are not abstract, they're immediate, and they're solvable with clear, enforceable federal policy. I spent the first half of my 20-plus year career teaching for Bed Pine schools in urban areas, and the second half in rural communities. And I've seen what happens when decisions made in Washington don't match the reality on the ground. When a hospital in Klamath Falls or Pendleton is at risk, it's not just health care. That's whether a community can survive. I will pass a rural hospital global budget program to guarantee stable funding, fix Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement so rural providers are paid based on actual cost, and build a workforce pipeline with loan forgiveness and rural residency programs so providers train and stay here. Water is the lifeblood of this district. From the Klamath Basin to the Rogue and the Deschutes, I will invest in irrigation modernization, enforce basin-wide water management that respects tribal treaty rights, and support agriculture, and fund watershed restoration and forest management to reduce wildfire risk and protect long-term supply. Affordability in this is not an accident. It is the result of policy choices. I will enforce anti-price gouging laws, address corporate consolidation, and ensure the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share, including closing loopholes that allow billionaires to avoid taxation by borrowing against assets. At the same time, we must invest in rural housing, childcare, and workforce development so people can live and work here. And we cannot ignore the foundation that holds all of this together, our democracy. And just this week, the Supreme Court further weakened protections under the Voting Rights Act, making it harder for communities to challenge unfair maps. And that means Congress must act. So my focus is simple: affordability and accountability, lower costs, deliver results, and make Congress work for the people it serves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Peter Larson, microphone is yours.
Hello, and thank you. Hello, everybody. I am Peter Larson. I am running as a Republican against our incumbent Cliff Bentz in the primary. I have a degree from Oregon State University. I was a high school teacher in Sweet Home, Oregon. I now live in La Grande, Oregon with my family, my beautiful wife who is a pharmacist, and I have two little boys, 3 and 1. Just some quick facts about Congressional District 2. Over 40% of our residents rely on Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP benefits. Right now, we are paying incredibly high prices at the grocery store, for healthcare, and of course, we are now embroiled in another Middle Eastern oil war that has skyrocketed our fuel prices, both gas, diesel, and everything else. And when faced with these hardships, I look around and I look for our leadership, and I don't see him anywhere. Our incumbent refuses to hold town halls, open public town halls, and I want to let everybody know that is the first thing I would do. I would hold a town hall in every one of the 22 counties here that make up Congressional District 2. I will go to Grants Pass, Fields, Oregon, Burns, Enterprise, the Dalles, everywhere in between. And we face a lot of issues that I don't believe are being addressed. We still have nitrate pollution up in the Umatilla and Morrow counties. We have water issues all throughout Congressional District 2. We have a lot of wolf issues still up in Northeast Oregon that need to be addressed, both through prevention as well as on the ground, listening to folks and what they face. I want to be a voice for rural Oregon, one that people can rely on and people can contact and hear a response from. When I go to the ballot box in Congress and I vote to represent Eastern Oregon Congressional District 2, I'll think of several things. I'll think of how is this going to affect the constituents of our district, and how will this play with the Constitution? And I believe those are the most important things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rebecca Muller, you're up.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Mueller. I am a rural pediatrician, a mother, and an advocate, and I worked in rural healthcare for 15 years. We heard already the word experience, and I just want to offer the idea that when we are voting for a representative for our district, what kind of experience do we want them to have? My experience is 15 years of connecting with struggling families, all from rural areas who have had an economy that's not working for them while they're working harder and harder. That partnership, one-on-one, over and over in a clinic room, has inspired me to fight in this fight and represent those families in our national government so that we can actually create policies that work for them. I also have 15 years of experience building across differences. When you work in rural America, oftentimes your patients don't agree with some of the standard pediatric recommendations, things like vaccines, like masking during COVID and isolating away from schools. These are all discussions that I had during COVID, and these are relationships that I continued to build as parents pushed back, but found that in my office and in our relationship, they were not judged, but we created a partnership and a trust. And that's what I want to bring to this district. I also have 15 years of experience of advocating for rural America. A lot of times, experts and even insiders and academics think they understand the dynamics that we are contending with in rural America. And I have seen how that limits our ability to treat our communities, and oftentimes their advice is just plain wrong. We need someone that's willing to listen to perspectives, to have their mind open, and be a representative for all of us. My fight is definitely against Cliff Bentz, who is not a representative. He's a politician. He does not show up. He does not do the work. I will be there. I will show up, and I will always be someone that's listening for perspectives, and I appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you very much. Peter Quince.
Well, I've admired the League of Women Voters for since I was a kid. My mother was active with them, and I support your mission to present what the candidates stand for so voters can understand. So I come to this race as a technocrat, as a nerd. I'm a 34-year or CD2 resident. I studied economics and international relations at Columbia University. Former small business owner, technical writer. I helped create an online professional education company for whom I wrote numerous classes on the federal and state laws and regulation that govern taxes, banking and commerce, real estate, and insurance, including the Affordable Care Act. As I said, I'm a nerd. And what that means is that I rely on data, evidence, and pragmatic solutions, which is what led me to a series of audacious proposals that I posted on my website that are nowhere near democratic orthodoxy. For example, they include concrete ways to retire our $40 trillion national debt, which is more than our annual national GDP. And that hasn't happened since World War II, which is something we should all be concerned about. But no Democrats call for this. In fact, I had a Republican county commissioner candidate for him yesterday lean over and say, "Are you sure you're not a Republican?" And the truth is, I'm not of either party, or maybe I'm of both parties, or at least of classic Democratic and classic Republican. My proposals are focused more than anyone on the young. That's why I've made AI a central focus of my campaign. If you're in school or a recent graduate, you're terrified that AI will obsolete you. But not only has Congress failed to act, but the current administration is preventing any states from doing so. I'll lead the creation of an aggressive national program to harness AI, maybe including universal basic capital, in which we all get a stake in the AI economy, which I can explain on my website,
Okay,
pqnow.net.
thank you,
That's the
Peter. Peter, we have to move along. So next up is Don Rasmussen, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Rasmussen, and I am in the Dells where I live with my husband. I'm a small business owner, and I've run a career services firm where I've helped over 5,000 people learn about their careers, write their resumes, and negotiate salaries so that they have a better life. And so you could say that helping people is part of my lifeblood, and that also includes all of my volunteer work in the community, which includes serving on the local school district board, farmers market board, and also on a fire a page letting people know about fires. And so, why am I running? Well, this is something that I get a question about this a lot. And I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it for ego. And I'm not doing it for influence. This is all because we need people to stand up for our democracy. And that's what I'm doing. Would I rather be sitting at home watching television, watching Netflix with my husband? Absolutely. But sometimes the most difficult things we need to do require us to step outside of our comfort zones. And so we are right now on an extreme precipice with our country and an inflection point in U.S. history. Of all the candidates, I've been the one zooming across the district and I've been having conversations. So I have up to the minute information about what their concerns are. Affordability is huge. Farmers are hanging on by a thread. Schools are falling apart. We also have healthcare that is really in bad shape and people are having to travel hours if their own hospital is closed. So there's a lot of things on their mind and they're very not happy with Cliff Bentz. So we really have to look at this also at the national level. We're at an inflection point because we are on the outside looking in at the nation's largest crime scene with wars, atrocities, kidnappings, murders, graft, corruption, you name it. So you need a fighter. And that's what I am. I am ready to stand up and get out there and tear up Cliff Bentz in the general election. And I'm really excited to debate him. And it's time. We need to flip this seat. It is not time to waste this. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Snow, please.
Good evening. My name's Patty Snow, and I live in the Rogue Valley. It's hard to believe that this is the last forum before the primary. I threw my hat in the ring last May, shortly after President Trump took office, it became evident that his agenda focused on nationalism, on rolling back protections for our environment, and on cutting social programs. In contrast, I believe in world cooperation. I believe that we need to be good stewards of the environment. And I believe we need to focus on improving the lives of American citizens. And when the freedoms guaranteed to us under the Bill of Rights began to be challenged, I feared that future generations were not going to inherit a country with the same freedoms you and I had when we were growing up. And that's when I got mad. I was taught that if there is a problem, if there is an injustice in the world, you don't complain about it. You don't bury your head in the sand. You don't point a finger and blame other people or expect them to fix it. You get in and fix it yourself. That's when I decided to run to represent CD2. I have a lifelong career of business management. I have worked with companies in 110 different countries, that was misspoken. In 14 countries, 110 different offices, and helping them to understand our culture, the way we work, and listening to the way they work, and coming up with solutions together. I believe that I am the best person to do that in Congress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. And you've touched on many of the issues that are on the tops of minds of voters. So let's dive in a little deeper on some of these. So the first question this evening is, even with increasing wages, farmers are finding it challenging to get the workforce needed for planting, harvesting, and processing. What steps should Congress take to increase the labor force for Oregon producers? And we'll start with Peter Larson, 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you. I think there are several ways that Congress can, increase, like you said, the amount of workers that we have for out here for a lot of different purposes. One is going after some monopolies. So right now, roughly 80% of our meatpacking industry is controlled by about 4 different companies. When that happens, they can offer, it's essentially monopoly or oligopoly, however we want to say it, they can offer lower wages. And that's going to depress how many people want to go and work for them. And so that in turn affects ranchers down the line. They can get less for their product. So that is something that should be looked at. I do believe the current administration has talked about that. And so I would absolutely spearhead. I know there's been some legislation introduced by several folks back east who have poultry in their district that I would love to look at, partner with, and go after. The other is, of course, immigration. So Ronald Reagan said that we are a shining city on a hill and that we hum with commerce, and that if we have to have walls, they should have doors that are open for people who want to come here. Paraphrasing. And we need to look hard at our immigration policies and how we can let folks who want to work, who want to have a better life, who want to benefit the United States, can come here. It takes years, it takes thousands of dollars, and it takes lawyers to do that. And I don't believe it should do that for somebody who wants to legitimately come and work here. Opening up immigration like that, having folks come here who want to benefit and who want to work, absolutely can help increase the workage that we need out here, certainly in orchards in the Dalles and Medford, as well as farms and ranches, particularly out here in Northeast Oregon that I know of, but certainly down in Central and Southern Oregon as well. I'm sure there's more, but I'll throw it back to you. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Andrea Card, do you want to take that question?
There we go. Okay, great. Love this question. And I agree with Peter. We do have monopolies that have a stranglehold on the huge processing plants across our CD2 district. And we need to address those. We need to even the playing field. We need to raise wages for the folks that are willing to do this kind of work. And the majority of the folks that are willing to do this work come from our immigrant communities. And we have had a lot of wrenches thrown into that process with the immigration and the ICE issues. And I would be a stalwart supporter of any programs that would maybe do pilot programs until they get full citizenship. They can at least come in and work because they are part of our tax base. They're paying into the small communities, they're going to the stores, they're buying groceries, they're paying rent, and they're helping with our economy. And we need to raise wages for everybody. We are living in a situation where we can't afford the rent, people can't afford to buy houses, and they're choosing to forego healthcare because they can't afford copays. So it just comes down to the working class needs to be treated better. We need to pay them more so they want to do the work, and we're not relying on one contingency to save us. So that would be what I would be a supporter of. And I think that's the end of my answer.
Thank you. All right, Patty Snow, you're up.
Thank you. So ICE was created in 2002 in response to 9/11. And at that point, it was to help weed out people that were in our country illegally that meant us harm. And now we see that that has become something very different. Do we have an issue with people crossing our border illegally? Most definitely. Do we need to have strong borders? Yes. But we need to change the way people are able to become citizens. Because people crossing into our country, the vast majority of them are not doing it to deal drugs. They are not doing it for nefarious reasons. They are doing it to escape poverty where they are and to create a better life. And our industries depend on these immigrants. So what we need to do is we need to be focusing on how to have better control of our border. But when people come to us and they have a legitimate reason for wanting to come into this country and they can prove that they can be good citizens, we need to make their path to citizenship much easier and much more affordable. That is why I believe we need to disband ICE and create two new programs. Border control, which has the primary responsibility of just making sure that people coming across our border are doing so legally. And we need to have a new group called immigration assistance that will help immigrants become U.S. citizens. We are a country that was built by immigrants. Immigrants serve our communities in so many ways. Rather than fight them and deport them, let's help them become good citizens. We will all benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just remind everyone of the question. Even with increasing wages, farmers are finding it challenging to get the workforce needed for planting, harvesting, and processing. What steps should Congress take to increase the labor force for Oregon producers? And Don, you're next up.
Well, first of all, we have to look at some of the things that might be mitigating or preventing people from coming here. And when we have an ICE entity that is coming out and basically doing all kinds of really bad things that are illegal and against the Constitution as far as our rights and people on our soil. So we need to basically disband ICE at this point, and they're not fulfilling their mission. They're basically terrorizing people. And then secondly, you know, when you think about what the visas are, I was talking to an orchardist in the Dalles, and he was talking about how difficult it is to get workers. And he's talking about the H-2A agricultural visa that allows people to come into the state. And the costs are not that much for the visa itself, but there's a lot of other costs associated with it, processing fees and agent fees and whatnot. So in some cases, for folks to come in the United States, we're looking at, you know, maybe $1,500 to $2,000. A lot of these folks don't have this kind of money. That's why they're coming here to earn money. And so what we need to do is make sure that we can loosen up the fees. Obviously, we need to have border security. Obviously, we don't want criminals in our country, but create a more humane system so that we can open up those visas to get more people in here and lessen the threat from ICE. I mean, basically, these are the people coming to escape things that are horrific in anybody's mind, and then they're coming here to make a better life. They're contributing to our communities, they're contributing to our tax base, yet they're not able to take advantage of a lot of the citizen benefits that we get as taxpayers that are citizens. So I say we need to have more humane ways to pathways to lead immigration citizenship, and also expand the H-2A visa.
Okay, thank you. Peter Quince.
Well, as I said, I'm a nerd. I rely on data, and I think it's a great way to reach across and explain to people an issue in a way that maybe takes some of the emotion and the fire out of it. In this case, a recent Cato Institute, Conservative Institute study showed that immigrants, legal and illegal, contributed $17.4 trillion more over 20 years to the federal general fund than they took out in benefits. And without that, our federal debt would be 30% higher, and Medicare and Social Security would be bankrupt. So what I propose, and as I said on my website, pqnow.net, I have audacious proposals. And one of them is an immigration board of governors modeled on the Federal Reserve, 12 districts. And in each case, the districts can judge, the governors can judge whether more immigration is needed. For example, here in the Pacific Northwest, what works for us may not work for people in the middle of the country or something. So they would because immigration needs to be controlled, but it is also mostly beneficial. And I think if people understand that, we'll come to a consensus understanding and solve this important issue.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca Muller.
So in this question, what we're really getting at is rural economies, and agriculture is the heart and blood of the rural economy in many of the counties in our district. So when we're talking about the workforce costs and the labor costs and the challenges to that, I would really like to focus on what do we want? We want a thriving rural economy where those communities are not only making living wages and having a lifestyle that is enriched by the local economy, we are also talking about rural economies that are ready for the future and not being left behind. So the three things that I would focus on to address specifically the labor issue, right now, we do rely on a lot of immigrant labor. And so making sure that we have good stabilization of the H-2A visa program, making sure that we understand how that's being carried out, that is also being carried out fairly, because one of the problems with the H-2A visa program is that it also creates lower wages for agricultural work. One of the other things I think we need to decide is, do we want healthy food that's locally sourced? If the answer to that is yes, and we want to increase the access to that food for people at all socioeconomic status levels, then I would highly recommend we look at subsidizing our food production, making sure that people are in the labor of agriculture are making healthy living wages that can support families in those communities, while also making sure that the cost of fresh produce and local food systems is something that's attainable. The last thing I would want to focus on, and by the way, we subsidize oil companies with billionaires, so I think we can subsidize food systems. The last thing to focus on is our education. We really want to make sure that there's quality science education in enterprise. I heard from someone that said they actually cut their home ec and agricultural economic classes from the high school, and we could be doing a lot more in our community colleges and agricultural areas to prepare that workforce for the future.
Thank you. Mary Doyle, please.
Yes, hello. This is a real issue across this district. Farmers are raising wages, but still can't find enough workers to harvest the crops, keep operations running and to stay viable. So the mechanism here is fixing a system that isn't aligned with reality. So first, we need to modernize and streamline the H-2A agricultural visa program, as others have stated. Right now, it's complex, slow, and unpredictable. Congress can simplify the application process. They can create a stable year-round visa option, not just seasonal, and that ensures timelines actually match planting and harvest cycles. So that gives farmers a reliable workforce when local labor isn't available. Second, we need to stabilize the existing workforce. So I support a legal pathway to long-term agricultural workers who are already contributing to our economy. That reduces turnover, it increases stability for employers, and it brings people fully into the system with labor protections and tax accountability. Third, we should invest in workforce development locally. That includes funding through workforce and education programs to connect people in rural communities to agricultural jobs, especially in areas like equipment operation, irrigation systems, and food processing. So fourth, we also need to support innovation where appropriate. We need to have mechanization and efficiency improvements, but in a way that complements, not replaces our workforce, especially for crops that still do require manual labor. So the local impact is straightforward. Farms in Central and Eastern Oregon can operate, harvest, and remain economically viable instead of scaling back or shutting down. Congress's role is to set visa policy, fund workforce programs, and ensure labor standards are fair and enforceable. Right now, the system is unpredictable and inefficient. So fixing that is not just in agriculture, it's about food supply, rural economies, and keeping farms in operation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chris Beck, please.
Thanks. Well, obviously, immigration is a big part of the solution. It's complicated. In the past, we've had bipartisan solutions to address immigration challenges, but over the last couple decades, we always fall short. We were very close in 2024. Senator Langford from Oklahoma had crafted a bipartisan immigration bill that the Democrats weren't super happy with, but happy enough to pass it. And Biden said he'd sign it. And then Trump came in before he was even elected and threatened the Republicans. So they didn't have, and then they backed off on working on that bipartisan bill. And this becomes the problem. We can't get bipartisan legislation anymore. Trump got elected, and then we entered the realm of chaos. Tariffs, ICE, the situation with ICE, people in masks, the war now, costs of all the inputs into agriculture, all these dynamics of chaos and costs in the ag economy have injected fear for workers. They're afraid of going into communities and looking for work. Companies have higher costs that are making it difficult for them to find people and just survive. So the chaotic element that Trump has injected and his agents in Washington have facilitated is a big part of the problem. It prevents us from getting to a bipartisan solution. All these ideas my friends here have mentioned are all should be part of the stew, and we should have a collaborative conversation about it. Tom Friedman, the journalist, what does he say? He wants a high wall with a big gate. And I like that image. You know, we need to manage our immigration system, but we can do it, but it should be done in a bipartisan way. And I would work to do that if I'm in Congress.
Okay, thank you. So let's stick with this for just a moment. All of you have referred to immigration matters as a key factor for our employers in Congressional District 2. So this is a rapid fire round, 30 seconds. Explain to your potential future constituents why you think immigration is a primary answer to the labor needs of your district. And we'll start with the same order. Peter Larson.
Yes. So our state on the West Coast is the oldest looking at demographics, and our congressional district is also the oldest looking at demographics. Folks are aging out here in Eastern Oregon, and when we have less people, we have less workers, and so they'll need to come here. It's just a matter of simple economics that we need people to work, and if we're not having enough kids and people are moving away from Congressional District 2, we need to get some sort of workforce out here to work on farms, ranches, orchards, etc.
Great. Andrea. Okay, Andrea, we'll come back to you if you can work on your technical issues. Let's go to Patty Snow.
Thank you. Well, Peter addressed many of these issues that right now our farmers and ranchers are suffering anyway because they're being affected not only by the lack of immigrants that are available to work the fields, but also because of the environmental issues we're having, the water issues we're having that are affecting their business. The war, it made it, and the tariffs, so that the products that they were creating were not being sold as they had been. So they're already suffering. So they can't offer more money.
Okay, thank you. Right, Don Rasmussen.
Well, we are in a situation where we have a lot of actual cuts in FFA and other agricultural education programs across our public education system. And a lot of multi-generational farms are at risk right now with a 46% increase in bankruptcies. So farmers are trying to make do with very razor thin margins. So, of course, looking to agricultural workers from other countries has become a primary motivator. So that's why I think immigration is a huge issue. And we need to take a strong look at that.
Okay, great. Andrea?
Yep, I'm back, but
seconds.
I'm having technical issues here with my internet. But
Okay, 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, in 30 seconds. We have relied on our immigrant communities to work in our agricultural enterprises for decades. And with what's going on with ICE, and that's really restricting the folks that can work, we need to have some sort of gateway programs where there is at least some sort of temporary citizenship where they are at least a visa is allowed for them to work so they can get out there and we don't have any interruptions in our agriculture.
Okay, thank you. Peter Quince.
Well, immigration is only a part of the answer. I'm also proposing for these collectives for small farms where they can use their bargaining power collectively to get cheaper prices and to mentor them in organic farming or local produce, get the product to the consumers and so on to make the farms that much more economically viable.
Okay, Rebecca Muller.
Well, as I mentioned, I think immigration is a part of it. I think that one of the key things is that the immigration population makes up about 60% of the agricultural workforce, and in some counties that's up to 90%. Only 2% of our H-2A visa holders, however, the workforce is only made up of 2.5% of the H-2A workforce. So I think the biggest thing is we don't have stability in our workforce. And as much as these people are contributing to the economy in very real ways, they need that stability to be able to do so.
Okay, thank you. Chris Beck.
This is a statewide problem. It's not just our district. I would work with all of the other members of Oregon's Congressional caucus to bring members from other states, maybe some of the Republicans who are wary of immigration reform and how it affects agriculture. I would work to all of our members to bring them to Oregon and learn, meet our farmers and hear some of our challenge, build relationships with members of the Republican Party to build a bipartisan solution.
Okay, let's move on to another challenging topic. Oh, excuse me.
Hey, Les, do I get 30 seconds?
Oh, I apologize.
All right. So,
well, all right, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Immigration is a primary part of the solution because the agricultural labor market simply doesn't meet demand domestically, especially for planting, harvesting, and processing work that is essential, physically demanding, and time sensitive. And the mechanism is federal policy. Congress sets visa programs and workforce rules. When those systems are slower and flexible, farms can't get the workers they need. By modernizing agricultural visa programs and creating legal, stable pathways for workers who are already doing this work, we can give the farmers the reliable workforce that they need and bring people fully into the system with protections and accountability.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, and apologies to you. Now we'll move on, unless I've missed anybody else. All right. So a primary concern these days is medical care, getting it and affording it. What reforms to government-backed health insurance would you advance in Congress? And Peter, we'll start with you. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Chris Beck.
Um, I'm not an expert in healthcare. I'll be real straight. It's very complicated. I do think we've got a great model here in Oregon, the Oregon Health Plan, which was created by Governor Kitzhaber, and Senator Alan Bates from Ashland was involved as well. And that program has enabled so many people to change their lives, to have basic health insurance, and to provide the preventive care they need so that other problems don't happen later, and that we have people going into emergency rooms with serious health problems. This program has worked well. The prioritization of services was cutting edge at the time. I would like to see some kind of Oregon Health Plan type model brought back to the nation. That's the sort of plan the whole country needs. In the course of doing that, I think we can reduce costs and save the government money. I think we all know that we spend more on healthcare and have the worst outcomes of any Western country. I think that Oregon Health Plan, Oregon Health Plan style model for the nation is something we should go for. I think John Kitzhaber, who has endorsed me, would be a great person to have come help Congress work on that.
Hey, thank you. Mary Doyle.
Yes, hello. So getting medical care and being able to afford it is one of the biggest challenges facing people in this district, especially in rural communities. And the mechanism starts with stabilizing access. So I would back a federal rural hospital global budget program, which would guarantee predictable annual funding so hospitals don't close when volume fluctuates in those small towns. So that would be implemented through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That is the agency that sets how hospitals get paid, and it's authorized by Congress. Second is affordability. I would support allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices and expanding those authorities so people aren't paying inflated costs at the pharmacy. It would also support capping out-of-pocket costs for seniors and expanding those protections more broadly. Third is coverage. I would protect and strengthen Medicaid, which is the backbone of rural healthcare access, and in moving towards a single payer option going forward. We need to have a federally administered insurance plan so people can choose private coverage if it's too expensive or unavailable. And so that increases competition and it lowers the premiums. Fourth is the workforce. I support expanding federal funding for residency programs where doctors train after medical school, and loan forgiveness. So providers train in rural communities and they'll stay there. Without providers, coverage doesn't translate into care. Fifth is behavioral health. I would expand funding for community-based mental health services and ensure that the 988 crisis system response system has dedicated rural support so people can access the care when they need it. And the local impact is very clear. Hospitals stay open, people can actually see a doctor without traveling hours, and costs will come down so families aren't forced to choose between care and essentials. So Congress's role is to set payment systems, expand coverage options, and ensure the workforce pipeline, let alone breaking up the monopolies.
All right, thank you. Rebecca Mueller.
So one of the quickest things we can do is actually add public options to the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And one of the ways we can do that is state by state. One idea I have is it's not just my idea. There are portable healthcare plan arguments out there that take healthcare plans out of the hands of employers. And even though the employers still pay into the fees, individuals can then pick the plan on the Affordable Care Marketplace themselves. And one of the things the states can do is actually provide their own version of a private insurance plan. And what that does for us is it gets money out of the hands of private industry corporations that have a vested interest in money in their own pockets, in building high rises in downtowns all over this country, and supporting sports teams. Nobody is asking their employer to pay for healthcare benefits so they can line the pockets of billionaires, and yet that is the system we have going on today. So by the American government, both at the state and the federal level, investing ideas and publicly funded policies in competition with private plans, we can start to ease off of our dependence on private insurance. The other thing we can do is expand Medicare. And a lot of people argue to do that down to 55. And I hesitate to say this because I know older Americans vote, but we really should be looking at the economics of actually starting with 25 to 30-year-olds. 25 to 35-year-olds. One, because they are a population that is the least insured because they're having a hard time finding full-time jobs with benefits. It's also the cheapest segment of the population to insure, which is why the private insurance companies want them in the mix in the first place. The bottom line is we need to have a decision as a country of whether we value the health of our citizens and want to make that a public good, or if we want to hang our healthcare in the hands of billionaires and continue with our poor American healthcare quality.
Okay, thank you. So the question again is, what reforms to government-backed health insurance would you advance in Congress? Peter Quince, you're up.
Well, first of all, we're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We can do whatever, we can use our resources as we are now to fund the war machine or to make ourselves and our neighbors healthier. I don't think anybody opposes that. Nobody says if their neighbor is ill that they shouldn't get medical care. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I did some classes on the Affordable Care Act. At the time, I'd like to say it's the worst law I've ever seen. The only thing worse than it was what existed beforehand. So the first thing we need to do is restore the supports that have been taken away. And then the long-term solution, I believe, would be Medicare for all. I think it's a program that people accept, that they would get behind, that they believe that they deserve. Of course, we do pay into Medicare. It is supported from our paychecks, and we do have premiums when you're on Medicare. You pay a premium. I also have a supplemental policy. Um, Rebecca's plan is really interesting. The only problem is that would increase private insurance for everybody else because you're taking out the cheapest pool. So, but it is an interesting idea. I think it's worth considering. I would be more advocating for going down steps like to 55 and so on.
Okay, thank you. All right, Don Rasmussen.
Well, I was just in Lakeview the last day or two, and I met a waitress at the Neon Cowboy there. And she's 65 years old. She's working 6 days a week and still can't afford insurance. And she is in a bad place. She just had surgery, and a lot of it was not covered. And so she wasn't able to get charity donations, that kind of thing. And plus, on top of that, Lakeview does not have a very good clinic there. I mean, they basically have triage stuff and then they get sent elsewhere. So I think it's pretty clear when you hear about these stories like that, then we need to start looking at that most immediately. And that's the thing. We have two situations going on right now. Number one, we need to deal with the immediate moment. What do people need right now at this moment? And number one is rolling back all of the cuts to HR1. We need to get those restored. We need to expand ACA and get more coverage and improve the access. And then on top of that, I really think that we need to look at making sure that we streamline the Medicaid reimbursements so that we're not losing the health care that we do have in Oregon. And we all know that almost every health center, except for a couple in the state, they're in bad shape. And I'm talking about hospitals and that kind of thing. So we have people across this district that are having to travel hours to get to care, and that's not okay. And we have to find ways to help support that. And absolutely, single payer is a great idea, but that's more of a long-term gain because that's going to be something we're going to have to work towards and build that. And certainly the ACA it has, covers us for now, but the long-term is, what Oregon's doing with its healthcare plan. That's a great model, and we need to start really thinking about how can we bring that to the national level. But we have to deal with the emergency stuff right now because our patient is bleeding out.
Right, Patty Snow, you need to unmute.
All right, I didn't click hard enough. Sorry. So there are three things that Congress can do immediately. First, we need to reverse the healthcare provider tax cut that was done in HR1. And that is money that is paid by healthcare providers that goes to fund our Medicaid system. Our rural hospitals depend on that funding to pay for the doctors, the nurses, the staff, to keep the rural hospitals open. Last year, we had 14 rural hospitals that couldn't meet their budget and are on the verge of closing. So we need to immediately get that money back into the fund in order to save our rural hospitals. Second, we need to support things such as the bill that Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley have put forward, which will dismantle vertical integration in the healthcare industry. What that is when major healthcare monopolies own many different aspects of your medical care, from the labs where the drugs are created to the pharmacies where they're dispensed, the healthcare insurance agencies that pay for it, and even the clinics where your doctor prescribed the drugs. And so they get a piece of every bit of your medical journey. We need to disband those monopolies in the same way that we disbanded the financial monopolies back in the 70s and 80s. And then we need to get rid of pharmacy benefit managers. They are the people that do the negotiating. They are the reason that the healthcare prices for pharmaceuticals are much higher in the United States than they are anywhere else in the world. And finally, we need to get big money out of our government so the health insurance companies and these healthcare monopolies can't buy off our Congress people to vote in their favor instead of voting to support the rural hospitals by supplementing them financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Andy Carr.
Okay. 20% of our rural Oregonians are having to forego healthcare because of costs. And nearly half of our 34 rural hospitals are on the brink of closure. I would advocate for the Rural Health Transformation Program funds. We need to ensure that the $197 million allocated for 2026 actually reaches our CD2 clinics, not just in the Valley. Also, we have a huge epidemic with addiction and behavioral health issues. We have fallen far short of offering the services these folks need, and they're burgeoning our hospitals and our clinics. I would support the Streets Act of 2026. This is a federal initiative that is designed to specifically help rural areas bridge the service gap by funding psychiatric care and medical stabilization in our rural communities that currently have zero detox beds. And this is a point that, a lot of folks don't want to talk about. It's not pleasant, but these folks are in need, and they are our friends and they are our neighbors, and a lot of them are our family members. And I would support legislation that would get the funds into CD2, that would be able to support these people, take the burdens off our clinics, give the rural hospitals the funds and the resources they need to come in and make this right. That's what I would support.
Okay, Peter Larson.
Thank you. I will say it is very hard to go last after hearing so many great suggestions. So in looking at government-backed health insurance and reforms for that, one, I would have extended the ACA subsidies. So that's just something that I would have done until there was a better plan in place or until we had some actual solutions and ideas. We have a lot of ranchers and farmers and small business owners. And right now it is with sky high insurance premiums and costs, it's very hard to get insurance. We need a top to bottom review of the entire industry. And as some have pointed out, that's very hard to do when there's a lot of money that is poured into Congress and poured into people's pockets to prevent that. We need to look at how can farmers and ranchers pool together to get insurance, whether through collectives or whether through groups, and try to because we know the larger the group, generally the cheaper the cost for the premium. Bob, we've already heard some about pharmacy PBMs, but the whole top to bottom monopoly system that we have right now. If government has created the problem by not enforcing laws on monopolies, then government should be the one to take care of that. It might sound weird for a Republican to mention more regulation, but I'm not even saying more regulation. I'm saying we need to enforce what we already have on the books to make it better for everybody. And so whether it is large, gigantic insurance companies who find it better to deny our health claims illegally than it is to benefit them, or PBM, so pharmacy benefit managers. They're part of the reason why Eastern Oregon has lost so many. They are the reason, frankly. We have lost so many independent pharmacies, and now some places have to travel hours. There is one in all of Grant County. So there's a lot of things we need to look at, and I would absolutely welcome anybody's ideas. So across the aisle, I just want to I just want to help and make things better.
All right, thank you. So let's switch up topics again. So federal firefighting and resources are being shuffled at the national level, and in some instances diminished as the wildfire risk grows, not only in our forests, but in our rangelands across CD2. What would you propose in the House to ensure more prevention of and protection from wildfires in this congressional district? And Peter, we'll start with you.
So there's been a couple of some major bills and executive orders that have been passed over the last few months, certainly in regards to timberland out here, and that's definitely affecting Congressional District 2. I like to point out to folks, I'm not a logger. I called up several friends and folks that I know who are in either the industry or education and asked them what their thoughts are. One, we do need to manage our forest lands better. Sometimes not managing them is not the best way. We look at nature and think, okay, we'll let it take care of itself. Well, many of these forests have gone through 3 or 4 non-forest fire cycles. So they are built up and they do essentially need to be managed to get them back on track. Parts of that out here in Congressional District 2 can be done through biomass. So thinning the forest floor, harvesting the biomass that then can be used for energy, can be used for job creation. There's several mills in Congressional District 2, but not very many that actually can do that. And that can lower the fire risk. And then, of course, the other is funding. It does come back to money, and we talk about, okay, we need to use our money wisely. And I think fire prevention and fire mitigation is a good tool and is something that we should be spending more funds on. That could certainly go down to the local level. What they need down in Medford and what happened in Phoenix could be very different from what happens up in Wallowa County or over in Umatilla. And so that does need to come down to a local level. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Andy Carr, you're up.
I actually had a Zoom meeting with a gentleman that does a lot of the education across Oregon, and he comes from a background of wildland firefighting with his family. That was a family-owned business. And to quote him, he says, it really starts at home. We need to get programs where we go around, especially in our rural areas, to support home hardening. We need to do our own work on our own properties to do whatever we can do to mitigate the risk of wildfires. And that being said, in the rural communities where I live, it takes about 45 minutes because we live so far out for emergency services to arrive. So this home hardening dynamic is extremely important. We also just saw that the court invalidated the Forest Service logging loophole, CE6. So we need smarter local-led thinning. We don't just need commercial logging. We've relied on that far too long. We need to get in there. We need to get boots on the ground, and we need to become part of the solution. I will fight for those home hardening grants and our local workforce training. So our community members are the ones that are protecting our forests. Additionally, I would champion the Empowering Common Sense Wildfire Prevention and Response Act. We need to move away from bureaucratic red tape and toward full suppression strategies and active forest management, as outlined in the 2026 USDA readiness memos. This means more thinning and fewer catastrophic burns, which personally, where I live, we got evacuated 2 years ago because of a wildfire. So I've lived it, I've been in the middle of it, and I've seen how it not only affected my family, but my neighbors. And a lot of my neighbors are 300% below federal poverty level. They don't have the cars, they don't have the resources to get up and get out and be safe. So it's extremely important.
Okay, thank you. Patty Snow.
Okay, I look at this in 3 stages: past, present, and future. For the past, we're very fortunate that we live in an area with a number of indigenous people. And the indigenous people knew how to care for the forests. They knew that it required maintenance and regular burning for the underbrush so that when there were lightning strikes, which there will always be, that the fire couldn't catch hold and run through the entire forest. So we need to listen to the indigenous people and start using many of their practices. For the present, we need to also bring in the BLM, the Conservancy or the Southern Oregon Conservancy, and we need to educate people on how to take care of the forests. But just as important, we need to bring back more of our environmental protection. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we don't start taking care of our environment to turn around our climate change, this is going to only continue to get worse. And then into the future. I think it would be a wonderful thing to have classes for our high school students where they learn how to take care of forests. So just as we have home ec or FFA, we could have wildland resource care where they get out into the forests where they listen to experts and they learn how to become good stewards of the land. So listen to the past, take action in the present, and plan for the future by teaching our young people also how to take care of the forests. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Don Rasmussen, please.
Well, this hits home for me because I've been an admin for a fire page for the last 8 years. So anyway, I think we have a lot of factors here at work. So first of all, we need to think about education, educating people about fire danger, what's going on in wildland fire interfaces, and what can you do, to Andrea's point, of home hardening. But also there's already programs like Firewise and getting people engaged in actually prevention. And then funding our fighting efforts. We do need to have firefighting efforts, especially when communities like Phoenix and Talent are a good example of what places that burned. I personally have been evacuated 4 times in the Dells, and we had the Rowena fire that burned within 3/4 of a mile from my house. So I'm living that reality. And, but I do think we need to have sustainable forest partnerships. Like the Blue Mountain Partnership has the right idea. They're getting all the right people together. They have foresters coming together along with cattle grazers and scientists, ecological scientists, environmentalists, and then government agencies. And sometimes when you start mandating at the federal level, you actually end up interfering with the work that's actually being done on the ground. So we have to kind of look holistically. Can we invest in those partnerships where the work's already being done, the answer's already in the room, they're already figuring it out? We just need to amplify that. I do believe that we need to look to the traditional ways that the Native people have been coexisting with the land. And prior forest practices have led us to where we are now, for sure, especially when we look at planting, where, we would log, completely clear cut everything, and then plants, and everything's really dense. It's all the same level. And that's how fires just whip right through there instead of the natural staggered understory of forests. So, I think it's going to have to be a lot of local efforts but investing in that. And when you think about the airdrops for the retardants, the $100,000 a drop, we can't just count on the airdrops from the tankers.
Great, thank you. Peter Quint.
The current administration has proposed a logging plan that would take our logging back to 1960s levels, which is insane because we don't have the infrastructure to do that now, and there was overlogging back then that we've only slowly recovered from. But I think we've also overreacted in the opposite direction. So I think we can increase logging to some degree, focusing on thinning, forest maintenance, and fire suppression as part of it. Removing burned trees. Peter mentioned biomass. There's also wood pellets that are an alternative fuel source that is cleaner than oil or coal. And I also propose that we have a citizen conservation corps where the kids can go out there and for 2 years in lieu of military service and get all the benefits that you would ordinarily get from military service. Our firefighters do an amazing job. They're fantastic, but they need more help in proactive work, and that's what we can do. That how we can do that, and as I said, use the increased logging to pay for that increased forest maintenance.
Thank you. Rebecca Muller.
So the first thing is reestablishing the forestry management funds that were cut by the Trump administration. He cut the forestry management by 65%. He also cut the workforce by 60%. And he specifically cut the forestry research budget by 80%. And a lot of what was going on in the forestry research was about forest management and wildfire containment and the best ways to control risks for wildfires. So I think restoring that funding is really important. The other thing, I love how Don mentioned that sometimes people with really good ideas are already in the room. I'd also like to reiterate that sometimes people with really good ideas are people that are already doing this well in other countries. So we have some great models in Canada and Costa Rica and the Scandinavian countries about how to have sustainable forestry programs. Those countries have been doing an incredible job of maintaining timber as a business industry and also maintaining health of the local communities and the forest as well. So kind of taking out of their playbook. One of the things that Canada does is it allows for regional and even provincial management of some of the forest management decisions. And I think we could look at that in the United States as well, making decisions that are best on a state-by-state basis because the state is more aware, as Don said, of what the local community is needing and what the local resources are. So the forest management also, I think, tells us that we need to stay away from our hyper-partisan politics. Sometimes we get really emotional seeing trees cut down, and sometimes to make for a healthy forest in the future, we need to cut trees down now, and those thoughts are brought to us by folks that specialize in forest conservation.
Okay, thank you. Mary Doyle.
Yes, beyond getting the funding back where it belongs, getting our research centers reestablished and not consolidated, and bringing the scientists back on board. In this district, wildfire is no longer seasonal, it's structural, and it's getting worse. And the mechanism here is proactive federal investment and coordination. First, I would increase and stabilize funding for hazardous fuels reduction through the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. We need to prioritize areas near communities in the wildland-urban interface. And so that means thinning prescribed burns and restoration work, obviously, before the fires start. Second, I support expanding the Good Neighbor Authority, which allows federal agencies to partner directly with state and local entities to accelerate the projects. So in Oregon, that means getting work done faster with the local crews who actually understand the landscape that they're on. And third is the workforce. Congress must reform wildland firefighter pay and classification. Many are still classified as temporary workers. So I support a permanent year-round staffing and better pay so we can recruit and retain the skilled workforce. And fourth is restoration. Healthy forests are less prone to catastrophic fire. So I support scaling federal forest restoration programs that reduce fuel loads while supporting local timber economies. And so the local impact is clear. Fewer fires, safer communities, and protected watersheds and more stable rural jobs. So Congress's role is to fund these programs consistently, remove the bureaucratic bottlenecks, and to ensure coordination across agencies. If we treat wildfire as an emergency only after ignition, we're going to continue to fall behind. So we need to invest up front and manage actively and build resilience into our landscapes and communities. In Patty, we actually have we have at Lapine High School Forestry and Natural Resources program. They actually have competitive logging sports teams in our state, and it's pretty amazing to watch these high school students train, throw axes, pole climb, and cross-cut bucking. It's pretty amazing to watch these students.
Okay.
Great.
Chris Beck.
Gradual but certain changes in weather patterns require we dramatically change our forest management strategies. And we're just going to have to bone up and start managing our forests much more intensively. It's going to require people, and it's going to cost money. Now, DOGE, in the last year, through the DOGE process, we've lost over 300,000 federal jobs. I'm putting out a proposal to create a new public service corps that would put people to work in jobs that AI won't take away. Many of those jobs should be in the outdoors. AI is not going to do forest management, but we could hire thousands of people across the country in various places that have climate challenges to help manage the forests more intensively, clearing the underbrush so the fires are less likely to happen, getting rid of the scrubby trees with no market so that the mid-sized trees can grow more quickly. It's all kinds of management strategies that can be undertaken, but it will require people. I propose having this sort of service corps. This wouldn't be a 2-year life experience. These would be full-time federal jobs, well-paid, insured. These would be contributors in every community. I'd have these teams in every rural community where forest is a risk, and we can do this all over the state and all over many of the western states. We have the resources to do it with just a small part of the jobs that Trump and DOGE had laid off. So my idea is a public service corps that is helping intensively manage our forests to help reduce fuel and reduce fire.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to all the candidates. That's all the time we have for questions to give you time to answer. So we're going to move to closing statements. Again, each candidate has 1 minute to make your final pitch to the audience out there. And we'll start with you, Patty Snow.
We have an abundance of riches. You have a number of really good, talented candidates to choose from. Where I think I stand out is I am passionate. I am also a tenacious fighter. Anyone who knows me knows that as soon as I put my eyes on something, it's going to happen. And as I said, I'm also a fixer. I learned that when there's a problem, you don't complain about it, you fix it. And I have a passion for this country. I want to help people. I actually like people. So if you want to elect someone who has your best interest in mind and who's going to get in and fight for you, then I think that I would be a great candidate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Don Rasmussen.
We are at a point that it is a moral imperative to restore our majority as Democrats in the House of Representatives and to restore representation to this district. It's going to require a candidate who has moxie. That's what I have. Everybody basically knows that I've driven almost everybody at 11,000 miles across this district. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I am getting all over the district and talking to so many different types of people and areas. It takes a lot of energy and stamina, determination, and commitment. And I already have been demonstrating that as someone who's getting around this district. I am learning, I'm keeping track of what people's needs are, what the district needs. So I'm ready to hit the ground running. So if you want someone who's ready to take on Cliff Bentz and the general, you're looking at her right now. And my campaign slogan is the new dawn for Oregon. So step in the light and come join me.
Thank you. Peter Quint.
Thank you all for being here. What I want you to keep in mind when you think about what we said here is that the right candidate can flip this seat. So stand back, Steve Kornacki. So look at this. The current president won the district by 28%. Recent elections in Texas and Louisiana, the Democrat overperformed by 31 and 32%. So it can be done. Okay, so now there are 6 Democrats in the primary. 4 are progressives emphasizing economic justice, a strengthened safety net, and government support for healthcare, which are all very noble. The 5th self-describes as moderate, but she tends to lean progressive. Tonight and throughout this campaign, I've advocated specific data-driven policies that defy party labels and confront our biggest problems. That makes me the right candidate to flip this district. And when we do, the national parties will flip out. We'll have the loudest voice in Congress, proclaiming you can't overlook us anymore, to proclaim we are here, we are united, we are resolved to get what we deserve. That's why I'm running and why I'm asking for your support.
Thank you. Rebecca Muller.
So when I made the decision to run for this district, I made it largely based on the experience that I mentioned before. But what that experience means for me as a candidate is that I focus on common ground issues. And those common ground issues for me are the economy, healthcare, and then also admitting that when we get so hyper partisan, we often make mistakes. And one thing I found in talking with my patients and in talking to people across this district is that when we admit that we are wrong, that we don't have all the answers, that the Democrats have largely lost in rural America because we haven't come to them with listening ears and open ideas and looking for their input. Those are the things that have scared rural voters from looking at Democrats. I have 15 years experience of crossing all sorts of, not the aisle, but the life experience gap. In addition, the biggest thing in terms of electability in a race that's filled with non-affiliated voters is trustworthiness and authenticity, and I think I bring them both to this race.
Good. Thank you. Peter Larson.
Thank you, everybody, for tonight. As a Republican, I jumped into this race because I was essentially personally offended by our by our current incumbent. I see him as hypocritical and as a failure in leadership. He refuses to hold public town halls. He outspends every other representative in the Senate with taxpayer dollars to go to the inauguration, while he also tells us that we need to be fiscally conservative. I believed I was the only one who shared that idea, and when I jumped into the race, I have been inundated by hundreds of Republicans, moderates, and Democrats who have reached out and thanked me for running. I will fight for your tax dollars in Congress. I will make sure we use them wisely, and I will make sure again to listen to every single person in this district, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Okay, I will be an open book and will listen to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mary Doyle.
Yes, I am the candidate because I'm not just naming the problems, I'm naming the mechanisms to fix them. And my focus is on affordability and accountability. I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I am a grandmother and a partner. I have stuffed my tip money into envelopes to pay my bills. I have worked across multiple industries in our state. I was raised in this state, and I know what it means to be an Oregonian through and through. I've spent my 20+ year career working in rural communities, solving real problems with limited resources. And I understand that policy only matters if it works on the ground. And that's why I'm ready to represent this district. It's not with talking points, but it's with enforceable policy that actually delivers results. We need someone who is willing to stand up to the people who can tell us no. I am that person who is not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to be the one that changes what happens in Congress and brings the money back to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Andy Carr.
I just want to thank everybody that showed up. I think this has been a wonderful opportunity, and we've covered a lot of ground tonight. And from the price of healthcare to the complexities of our agricultural issues and wildfires. But at the end of the day, these aren't just issues. These are the lives of our community members from Chiloquin to La Grande. And it's time for us to make a choice for a candidate that's not just the status quo. I've lived in rural communities my entire life. Rodeo queen, barrel racer, worked on in the Bering Sea, and I'm a personal support worker, and I'm raising a neurodivergent daughter. So she has experienced firsthand how these cuts impact those that are a little bit not up to what everyone else is able to do for themselves. So I'm asking for your vote because I bring grit. I can represent and have been representing the working class through my union, and it's time for a change. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, Chris Beck.
I've dedicated my life to public service. I have the experience to do this job, and I think I can hit the ground running and do a great job for the people of the district. There is nothing I'd rather be doing than campaigning to serve the Oregon I love and the people I've met and the people I hope to meet over the next 6 months. I look forward to doing it. I'll be a great candidate. I'll work hard. I'll work hard in Congress, and I will deliver for the people of District 2.
Well, thank you very much. That brings our program to a conclusion. I want to thank the candidates for their very diligent, informative, and respectful approach to viewers tonight and sharing the information. You know, I've covered politics in Oregon for 50 years, and one of the things I think voters tend to not acknowledge is that people like these candidates step up, come off the bench, put themselves in front of their neighbors, their citizens, their business owners to fight for what they believe in. And regardless of what you think about their particular politics, they each deserve your appreciation for at least making the effort to stand up and speak for what they wish for. I hope you found this an informative program this evening. If you want more details, you want to see the tape again, you can go to vote411.org. And I'm sure each of the candidates would be more than happy to field your questions directly. And with that, on behalf of the Oregon League of Women Voters, I bid you a good night.